December of 1981 started in an entirely ordinary way for the people of Great Britain. The country moved along at its usual pace. The Human League and Madness dominated the music charts. Street conversations still revolved around the recent wedding of Prince Charles and Diana, while the weather toyed with everyone through mild temperatures that felt almost like spring. No one imagined that within only a few days, Britain would be turned into the setting of a disaster film. This was not a slow or gentle cooling. It was a sudden and overwhelming that meteorologists would later name the Arctic Express. A cold front born deep within Siberia, gaining strength over the frozen emptiness of the Arctic, struck the British Isles at full force, leaving no opportunity for preparation. Everything shifted in a single moment. If you grew up when resilience came before comfort, this story will feel familiar. What follows is not nostalgia, but a look at a childhood shaped by necessity, where strength was learned early and life offered no safety nets. By the middle of December, the sky above the country suddenly became heavy and oppressive, taking on an unusual dull purple tone. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel to explore the stories, conflicts, and secrets that shaped 20th century Britannia. Your subscription helps us keep bringing more content like this. The wind, which only a day earlier had been little more than a chill, transformed into a cutting blade of ice that sliced through every layer of clothing. Within hours, temperatures dropped from comfortable positive levels to values that stunned even veteran forecasters. Yet the true chaos arrived with the snow. These were not light, drifting flakes. It was a collapsing wall of white that poured over towns and villages. In just one night, familiar landscapes across England, Scotland, and Wales disappeared beneath a snow cover that, in some areas, increased by 10 centimeters every hour. When New Year's morning arrived, Britain awoke to an unfamiliar reality. Amid the clinking of celebratory glasses, the nation found itself locked inside a frozen prison. The suddenness of the event brought everything to a standstill. People traveling to visit relatives for the holidays became stranded in snow traps directly on high-speed motorways. Major roads turned into massive cemeteries of abandoned vehicles, buried up to their roofs within hours. Visibility fell to only a few meters, while the howl of the blizzard swallowed every other sound. In that moment, modern Britain of the 1980s, with all its technology and ambition, suddenly felt just as exposed as it had centuries earlier. And this was only the beginning. The country had no idea that even harsher records lay ahead, ones that would permanently carve the winter of 1982 into history as one of the most brutal confrontations between humanity and nature. By January of 1982, it was clear that Britain was facing far more than an unpleasant winter. This was a climatic extreme on an industrial scale. Atmospheric pressure settled into a pattern that created near-total calm beneath clear skies, allowing the remaining warmth to escape straight into space. The deep freeze phase had begun. The night between the 9th and 10th of January would forever remain in meteorological memory. In the Scottish village of Braemar, temperatures plunged to an astonishing -27.2 degrees Celsius, matching a historic record from the late 19th century. This time, however, the cold was not limited to the Highlands. In Newport, Shropshire, an equally shocking -26.1 degrees Celsius was recorded. Britain had quite literally become a solid block of ice. The extreme cold produced physical effects that the infrastructure of the 1980s had never been designed to withstand. Standard diesel fuel inside trucks and buses began to cloud and thicken into a jelly-like substance. Paraffin separated out, clogging filters and shutting engines down instantly. A nation dependent on logistics and movement ground to a halt. Even more alarming was the effect on metal. Steel lost its flexibility and became as fragile as glass. On the railways, tracks fractured under internal stress, snapping with sounds like rifle shots echoing through the night. Trains were cancelled not because of snow accumulation, but because the rails themselves were breaking apart beneath the wheels. Nature added its own eerie soundtrack. Trees in parks and forests groaned and violently split as sap froze and expanded inside their trunks. Inside homes across the country, People heard unfamiliar cracking noises as water pipes burst, unable to contain the expanding ice. On the night of the 10th of January, Britain truly experienced what cosmic cold felt like, a state where the air seemed thick and sharp, burning the lungs with every breath. It was a relentless test for bridges, power lines, and people alike. The Britain of the 1980s, accustomed to comfort and reliability, suddenly discovered that its achievements meant little when the planet chose to reveal its frozen strength. By mid-January, the country faced a phenomenon that seemed unthinkable for Europe's moderate climate. Continuous blizzards combined with hurricane-force winds carved massive snow canyons along major transport routes. On the M4 motorway linking London to South Wales, snowdrifts grew so high that they completely swallowed road signs and even double-decker buses. A roadway that symbolized speed and progress turned into an endless white dead end. Thousands of drivers were trapped. Cars became immobilized within minutes, forcing people to abandon them in search of shelter in nearby villages or to wait for hours for rescue while carefully rationing fuel to keep heaters running. Transport paralysis was total. Railway lines did not simply freeze, they disappeared beneath several meters of compacted snow. In Wales and southwest England, the situation became critical as entire towns were cut off from the outside world. The snow-clearing machines available to local councils looked insignificant against the towering drifts. At this stage, police and military forces intervened using equipment rarely seen on British roads, snowmobiles. Police patrols on snowmobiles became the only means of delivering insulin to the sick and food to residents stranded on the outskirts. One of the most surreal sights was the roads carved open by heavy machinery. When blockages were finally breached, they revealed narrow corridors flanked by sheer walls of ice 10 to 12 feet high. Cars moved through these trenches seeing only a thin strip of gray sky above. Heathrow and Gatwick airports turned into vast waiting halls filled with thousands of frustrated passengers as flights were cancelled one after another. Britain of 1982, proud of its mobility, suddenly realized how fragile that freedom truly was. Distances of only a few miles between neighboring towns became insurmountable barriers, transforming a modern nation into an archipelago of isolated communities battling the snow. The winter of 1982 became a defining moment for modern Britain. Unlike 1963, when coal fires dominated daily life, the 1980s were shaped by technological confidence. Central heating was common, and everyday routines depended heavily on electricity and gas. This dependence soon became a critical weakness. When temperatures dropped below -20 degrees Celsius, systems failed one after another. Gas networks struggled to meet extreme demand, while electrical grids overloaded as millions of heaters ran continuously, flickering and shutting down. Residents of modern apartment blocks found themselves trapped in freezing concrete structures with no way to light open fires as earlier generations had done. Schools and factories closed not only due to blocked roads, but because heating them became impossible. Water froze inside radiators, and machines refused to operate as lubricants thickened into sludge. A country focused on efficiency came to a complete stop. Shop shelves emptied rapidly. With transportation crippled, fresh food became scarce. Newspapers spoke of so-called milk wars, where arguments erupted over a single bottle that managed to reach a store. Even when milk reached doorsteps, it froze solid just as it had decades earlier, pushing caps upward as a reminder that nature remains stronger than progress. One of the most destructive problems came from burst pipes. Modern plumbing proved unready for such deep frost. As water froze inside pipes, it tore through metal and plastic with enormous force. Thousands of basements and apartments flooded with water that immediately froze into sheets of ice. People slept in living rooms wrapped in every warm item they owned. Puffer jackets, fashionable symbols of the 1980s, were worn not for style but for survival. This winter made it clear that even in the age of computers and satellites, humanity remains a guest on the planet, dependent on the moods of Arctic winds. The winter of 1982 did not last as long as the endurance test of 1963. Instead, it was sharp, violent, and intensely concentrated. By February, the Arctic's grip began to loosen, leaving Britain stunned. As snow melted, it revealed twisted rails, shattered pipes, and damaged infrastructure. The nation began to calculate the losses. Economic damage reached hundreds of millions of pounds, an enormous figure for the time. Yet the true lesson was not financial. It was the realization that climate could shift instantly, turning a prosperous country into a disaster zone. Debates continue over which winter was worse, 1963 or 1982. While 1963 is remembered for its length, 1982 became infamous for its extreme temperatures and enduring records. That winter forced Britain to revise safety standards. Road surfaces were redesigned, plumbing insulation requirements were updated, and emergency services protocols for extreme cold were completely reworked. The experience taught the nation to respond decisively rather than relying on the mercy of Atlantic weather patterns. Today, when viewing archival footage of that winter, we see more than snow and ice. We see a generation confronting raw natural power during the era of disco music and VHS tapes. It was the last major trial by cold before global warming made true British winters increasingly rare. But those who remember January of 1982 know that nature never disappears. It simply waits. Somewhere deep within the Arctic, another express is already forming, ready to remind humanity that beneath the thin surface of civilization, the permafrost still waits, capable of stopping history in its tracks at any moment. December of 1981 began in a completely ordinary way for the people of Great Britain. The country followed its familiar rhythm. The Human League and madness dominated the music charts. Street conversations were still filled with talk about the recent wedding of Prince Charles and Diana. At the same time, the weather teased everyone with mild temperatures that felt almost like spring. No one imagined that within a few days Britain would resemble the setting of a disaster film. This was not a slow or gentle cooling. It was a sudden, crushing strike that meteorologists would later name the Arctic Express. A cold front born deep in Siberia, gaining strength over the frozen emptiness of the Arctic, slammed into the British Isles with full force. There was no time to prepare. Everything changed in an instant. By mid-December, the sky above the country suddenly became heavy and oppressive, taking on an unusual dull purple shade. The wind, which only the day before had been little more than a chill, transformed into a razor of ice that cut through every layer of clothing. Within hours, temperatures dropped from comfortable positive levels to figures that stunned even the most experienced forecasters. The true chaos, however, arrived with the snow. These were not soft, drifting flakes. It was a collapsing wall of white pouring over cities and villages. In a single night, familiar landscapes across England, Scotland, and Wales disappeared beneath a blanket of snow that, in some places, grew by 10 centimeters every hour. When New Year's morning arrived, Britain awoke in a completely different world. Amid the sound of clinking glasses and holiday celebrations, the nation found itself trapped inside an icy prison. The suddenness of the blow paralyzed everything. People traveling to visit relatives for the holidays became stranded in snow traps directly on high-speed motorways. Major roads turned into vast graveyards of abandoned vehicles, buried up to their roofs within hours. Visibility dropped to just a few meters, and the roar of the blizzard swallowed every other sound. At that moment, the modern Britain of the 1980s, with all its technology and ambition, suddenly felt as vulnerable as it had centuries earlier. And this was only the beginning. The country did not yet know that even harsher records lay ahead, records that would permanently carve the winter of 1982 into history as one of the most severe confrontations between humanity and the elements. By January of 1982, it became clear that Britain was facing more than an unpleasant winter. This was a climatic extreme on an industrial scale. Atmospheric pressure settled into a pattern of calm under clear skies, allowing the last traces of warmth to escape directly into space. The deep freeze phase had begun. The night between the 9th and 10th of January would be forever etched into meteorological history. In the Scottish village of Braemar, Temperatures plunged to an astonishing -27.2 degrees Celsius. It matched a record from the late 19th century. This time, however, the cold was not confined to the Highlands. In Newport, Shropshire, an equally shocking -26.1 degrees Celsius was recorded. Britain had quite literally turned into a block of ice. The extreme cold triggered physical effects that the infrastructure of the 1980s was never designed to endure. Standard diesel fuel in trucks and buses turned cloudy and thickened into a jelly-like mass. Paraffin separated out, clogging filters and shutting down engines instantly. A nation dependent on logistics and movement ground to a halt. Even more frightening was what happened to metal. Steel lost its flexibility and became as brittle as glass. On the railways, tracks fractured under internal stress. They snapped with sounds like rifle shots echoing through the night. Trains were cancelled not because of snow, but because the rails themselves were breaking apart beneath the wheels. If this story resonates, share it with someone who lived it, or with someone who didn't. Understanding where that resilience came from helps connect generations shaped by very different worlds. If you enjoyed this story about 20th century Britannia, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next episode. Your subscription helps us keep bringing more content like this.